Hey, there's on the back of a video. So on this one, I want to talk about maintaining consistency. Obviously, we saw that play out in the game against Leeds, where coming off a Europa League game and having to use some of our first team players, it affected our performance against Leeds. So I want to talk about some of the issues that would arise from being able to maintain consistency and how we can go about dealing with that. So the first one I want to talk about is depth. So some of the positions that I do feel like we need to address are right back, defensive mid, and left wing. So let's talk about right back to begin with. The issue here at the moment is that Ben White has become our first choice right back. Therefore, when we are looking at centre backs for Europa League games or cup games, we're having to use one of our first choice centre backs. So throughout this Europa League season, we've had to use one of Gabriel or one of Saliba as a partner for holding. And even if Ben White wasn't the first choice right back, even if he was on the bench to support Holding, we would have to use Tomiyasu as our first choice right back in the league, and also he would have to start in the Europa League because obviously we don't trust Cedric. So whichever way it happens, if it's a first choice right back that we sign or we sign another centre back, we're gonna have to address this position somewhere. So we need depth in that area, and I feel like we need to address right back. That's where we need to address and try to get someone a bit more offensive as well. That way, Ben White isn't our first choice right back. So if Ben White isn't our first choice right back, then he would be on the bench, or maybe Gabriel will be on the bench. Either way, one of them will be on the bench as a partner for holding. Therefore, we wouldn't have to keep on using our first choice centre backs in these games, and then we can actually rest them properly. Then, secondly, the next position is defensive mid. For me, I already mentioned already, and I said before already, like going into this season, we know the Partey's missed so many games in his first season, missed a lot of games in the second season, and then even in this season at the start he was missing games as well due to some fitness issues. So I feel like we're playing with our season if we go into January and come out of January without a defensive mid cover for him, because he's so important to the team in the way we want to play, because of the position that he plays and how he defends in the pivot. As I've mentioned in previous video, he's our guy in the second phase. If we try to press and we're not able to get the ball back, when the ball is loose, we need someone who's good defensively, who understands positioning and who's smart enough to be able to read these situations. Not any player can just play that position. We've seen that with Lokonga. He's not able to play that. So right now we can possibly use Lokonga as a centre mid cover for Xhaka, as we can use with Vieira as well. So when you think about centre mid or 10, we've got Xhaka, we've got Vieira, and we've got Odegaard that can share that position, and Lokonga that can share that position. But at defensive mid, we only have Partey, so that's a priority that we need to address, because if he's to get injured, our season is definitely going to be affected, because we've seen already we're not the same team without him in 11. So even if we don't have a player who can pass the ball like how he does, we need a player that can defend like how he does. So the next position as well is left wing. Obviously at right wing, we've seen that we've been able to trust Marquinhos for certain games in the Europa League, but we're still having to play one of Saka and Martinelli. In every single game in this Europa League, both Saka and Martinelli have played. And even the fact that they've played as well, but one of Saka or Martinelli has started, that's not, what we should be doing, especially against the teams that we're playing. We should be able to rest these two guys because they're so important. Even if we went into the transfer window to look for wingers, it's going to be very difficult to find players that can actually do what Saka and Martinelli are doing. It's difficult to find that kind of level of player, and we're going to have to spend a lot of money to get that. So the fact that we know that it's going to be hard to replace them if they're ever to suffer an injury or fitness issue, or even if they're to dip in form due to the amount of games that they're playing, or the fact that they're young players who can dip in form, we're going to need cover. So even if it's not a player that's at that level, which ideally we should be looking for a top class player, but we need somebody in there that can support these guys, just to ensure that they're not playing every single game. I said this over and over again. Martinelli and Saka can't play every game this season. They're so important. Even if it's just one of them that's injured, it's going to affect the way we attack. We attack with these guys. These guys are so important to the way we want to attack. They're also important to the way we defend from the front as well. They're important to the way we spread the pitch. Everything we do is based around these guys. They're so key, and for us to not have actual depth for this position, it's not good enough. And if we actually want to compete for the title, we need to have depth in this position. So left wing is really important. We need to try and get someone in January as well. As much as we need to try our best. Of course, it's going to be difficult to get a top level player, but this is what we need. We need to address that position, especially left wing, because right now at right wing we trust in Marquinhos. So the next thing I want to talk about is something that we had an issue with against Leeds. The way we try to control games is through our pressing. That's why we need to be always. That's why we need to perform always at our best. That's why we need to be our physical best in these games. You can see the way we start games. We're so quick off the block. As soon as we start high pressing, immediately we're up there. We're one of the quickest teams to start the games, and we're also able to maintain this pressing throughout the whole 90 minutes as well. But for us to do this, we need to be able to rest these players. That's why using these players in the Europa League game and the Cup games, and then having them repeat the same thing in the league games, we're not gonna be able to get away with this over 38 games in the league season. So we need depth to ensure that these guys can't do that. And when you think about the way we control these games, we need to be at our physical best. And to be at your physical best, you can't be playing Thursday and then playing in the league the same day as well. We need to be able to rotate these players. And even the players that are playing the league games, they also need to be able to rotate out of the first team as well, so that other players who are trusted on the bench can come in as well and repeat what they're doing. Because even if they don't play on Thursdays, they can't just keep on doing this for 38 games season over and over and over and over again without a drop in form. Even if they stay fit the whole season, there could possibly be a drop in form. So that's what we need to watch out for, because we're competing with a Man City team that has that squad in depth. So we can't mess around with that if we actually want to compete with them. So like I said, the way we try to control our pressing. But for that to happen, we need to be at our physical best. For that to happen, we need depth. So another way, I've said this before, and this is something I've mentioned about how we need to manage games and what we can also manage our physical fitness throughout the season as well, is how I say we need to control games through monopolizing possession. Because at the moment, when we get the ball, we're just very direct. We get the ball, we're direct. We're trying to get through from Partey to the fullbacks, to the wingers, to the 10. Everybody just wants to get forward immediately. We're quick team, which is fun to watch. It's good to watch. It's also really good to start games like that, and we shock teams with the way we start these games because of how quick we are. Look at what we did against Liverpool. We're so fast off the block. We're quick with the trigger, and we're ready to go ASAP. But you can't perform. You can't play like this for 90 minutes and also at the same time perform like this for a whole league season. You need to be able to rest, and Barca were the best team at doing this, and Man City now are showing that they at the moment are the best team at doing this. Is where you can rest whilst having the ball. And what you do is that when you have the ball, you don't have to be so direct all the time, especially when you're in the lead. You can keep the ball, control it, play the ball around, force the opposition to come out. You don't always have to, because trying to break down a team is really difficult and is draining both physically and mentally. When you're continuously just direct and repeating the same thing, you're also giving the opposition the chance to end up in an end-to-end game. Obviously, our pressing is good enough to ensure that we're not ending up in these end-to-end games. But when our pressing is not there, we're not going to be able to prevent them from being able to come back us and press and then end up in this back-to-back game that we did against Leeds. We're not going to be able to prevent that if we're not our physical sharpness. But if we're controlling the game through monopolizing possession, keeping the ball, passing the ball around, dictating play, just to be smart with the ball and not to be so direct. Of course, it's more entertaining to be direct, but at times you need to relax on the ball, be more composed, especially when you're in the lead, force the opposition to do all the work by coming out. When they come out, then they start to create more space because they start to panic. The time is running out. They need to get a goal. They need to get in the lead. They start panicking. They start coming out. They start creating space. They start making mistakes. That's where you exploit. That's where you start making these passes. That's where you start seeing all these passes where you used to see with Man City, where you get Sterling running in behind, Gabriel Jesus running in behind, or you saw that with Pep's Barca team, where you had David Villa or Pedro running in behind, or Jordi Alba overlapping. When you see this space is when teams start to panic and they start to force things, then they start to make mistakes, then you can exploit them. But all of this comes from just understanding that you don't have to rush it. We don't have to be so direct. We can just monopolize position. We can be calm on the ball. We can control games. And through this, we can rest on the ball as well. So everything is not just moving at 90 miles per hour all the time. And that way we can also ensure that we're physically sharp for the whole season as well. And another reason why I feel like this is something that we can do, or a player that I feel like that can support us, is a player that we've been linked to before, and that player is Locatelli. I feel like if he's still available, that's someone we can go for. Because I feel like when you look at Partey, for example, and Granit Xhaka isn't like a tempo setter. You know, at the moment he's playing more like a box-to-box kind of player. Even though I do feel like we need to look for a box-to-box type of player who has a bit more technical quality and a bit more physical capability in terms of moving up and down and receiving between lines. But Partey as well, as a defensive mid, this is also something that he needs to learn as well. He also needs to learn that just by looking at the likes of Rodri or Busquets, it's just that you don't always have to go forward all the time. You can pace yourself as well, and you can set the tempo and control the game, and you're the one who's constantly receiving the ball from the centre backs. you can manage the whole situation. You can release the ball when you need to. You can tell the team to calm down and ensure that we're not just rushing over and over again. And I feel like a player that can do this for us is a player called Locatelli. And he is a player who understands how to set the tempo, control games, and dictate play, and ensure that we're not in a rush all the time. So anyways, that's how I feel like we can learn how to be more consistent for the whole season and maintain it. Anyways, thank you guys. See you in the next video.